I'm Jacob Courtwright, and this is The Locker Room. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into another very exciting episode of The Locker Room. If I seem a little bit more excited today, it is because The Locker Room has officially received all of its podcasting gear. After weeks and weeks of waiting because of the coronavirus, we are here. We have it all. It's set up. I'm using it. I'm excited. I'm very excited. I'm very pumped. I'm saying very a lot because it's very awesome. We have a very good show today, actually, with an incredible guest. We will be with him in just a moment, and we'll talk about that more in just a moment. But first, as always, before we get started, make sure you follow The Locker Room on Twitter, TLR with Jacob, on Facebook, The Locker Room Host Jacob, on Instagram, The Locker Room Podcast 615, and finally on TikTok, The Locker Room 22. And let's get started. Well, right off the bat, we are actually going to go directly into our very special guest today. He will be joining us via phone call in just a moment. But before he does, let me introduce this man. From the UFC Contender Series participant twice, to now a UFC heavyweight fighter after his victory against Chad Johnson in the Contender Series last week. He has a debut fight at the UFC November 28th. Please welcome my friend and now UFC heavyweight, Josh Parisian. Well, Josh, welcome into the show. Thank you so much for being with us. All right, first and foremost, I do want to get directly into your fight with Chad Johnson. Kind of want to go into what was your game plan going into that fight?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me again.
Absolutely, anytime.
Game plan was almost identical to what I did out there. We were going to chop at his legs. We knew he wasn't super he didn't have great footwork. He was kind of off balance a little bit. And almost, as you can see, his upper body was like really he's like really big in the upper body, but he was a little bit smaller in the lower body.
He had prison body, as we would like to call it.
Yeah, so I wanted to chop at those legs. And then it was to keep my guard up because he does throw heavy. That right hand, right overhand.
Yes.
He's not put a lot of people out with that. So we want to make sure that our hands were up. And we wanted to feint a lot because he also likes to wait for that kind of lull in the action and wait for his time to go, and then he goes. But if I can make him uncomfortable and kind of back him up and feint, kind of make him feel the pressure, he was a little hesitant to go forward. Yeah. So it was mostly to make him fight on our terms and not on his own.
Yeah, well, see, that's actually I said this earlier on the Levi Bowman show. I said the very first thing that stuck out to me, and this was before I even talked to you, was when you came out, it looked like it was very leg heavy. And that's something that going back and watching your fights, I was like, man, I've never really seen Josh lead with leg kicks. And when you stunned him with the first kick, I think that kind of shocked him. And that's where I saw him starting to fight back and then you starting to fight forward. So that was my next question, is your kick seemed to really open your game plan up. So that was part of your game plan going in, was to take care of that lower body.
Yeah, no, 100%. Kick low and kick hard. Also, the inside leg kicks were good because whenever he wants to throw that right hand, if that leg's not there, if I chop it out, then his cross and his overhand lose all their power.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned this after your fight in your interview. You said Chad Johnson is somebody that is better than half of the heavyweight division in the UFC right now. I tend to agree with you, especially he is a very he reminds me a lot of like early days Kimbo Slice when Kimbo first came into the UFC, which was a heavy-handed hitter but never really worked on his lower half. But for those of you at home, Chad Johnson is not only a respectable opponent, but Chad Johnson, I think, is somebody that will be fighting in the UFC in the next 2 to 3 years, and you made him literally look like a rookie out there. So, I mean, that's kudos and hats off to what you were able to accomplish against a guy like Chad Johnson.
Yeah. I also had the advantage of fighting there once before and being an ultimate fighter and used to that atmosphere, which after the fact, he did say, he's like, man, I couldn't, I had a hard time with that. It was difficult for me because it is like a very unique situation with no crowd and it's a lot of pressure. So
what do you think of after speaking with Chad? What do you think of Chad and where his future is going to be in this fight game?
I think he's going to do good. I think that I have a lot of experience on him, and
Yeah.
he is very can't talk, heavy-handed.
No, you're okay.
But he did come in at 213, which is very light for a heavyweight.
Yeah.
But I think that he probably got off a lot of stuff that's not allowed in the UFC. You know what I mean? I think that they
100%.
didn't expect to lose that much weight, because he's normally a much more scary specimen than that. You know what I mean? He shrank up a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and some people are giving me a hard time about it too, but I mean, there's nothing I could do. I just signed a fight, and as far as I knew, he was a heavyweight. You know what I mean? So,
well, and that's something, I mean, you could tell I don't think he belongs necessarily in the heavyweight division going forward. He, to me, looks more of like a light heavyweight. You are 100% going to be a name to be reckoned with in the heavyweight division. So moving forward, what does being a UFC fighter mean to you? I know this is a goal and a dream that you've been chasing, but to actually hear when Dana White said in the press conference afterwards, he said, I'm going to give this guy a shot. And then the reporter that was asking him the question was talking about how your footwork for a heavyweight is going to shock a whole lot of fighters when you get to that division. Because if you see the heavyweight division, it's not quick footwork. It's usually somebody that is really good at one thing. You have the Stipes of the world that are very good at punching and boxing. You have a Derek Lewis, who's a one-hit wonder kind of guy. But your footwork, I think, is what really sets you apart, especially what's going to set you apart in the UFC. So what does it mean to be a UFC fighter, and what do you think your skill sets in the heavyweight division are your strengths to start off with?
It's funny that you say my footwork looked good, because a lot of people are saying that, and I didn't really move a lot in that fight. I don't feel like I showed off my footwork in that fight, because we just wanted to be there, hands up, just almost kind of like a defensive way. You know what I mean?
Well, especially at Chad Johnson, who he loves to just come over with the heavy hitters. When I looked at your footwork, it wasn't necessarily the distance, especially with footwork. It's usually the distance you're traveling in a shorter amount of time in the fight game. The way I saw your footwork is you were maneuvering to where even when he was landing shots, they weren't effective because everything was slightly off. So I thought I thought your footwork was impeccable, to be honest. But going back and watching all your other fights, I think your footwork's one of your strongest suits as well. For your size, your movement is so quick, and it shocked me. And watching a lot of your training videos, but leading up to this fight, I saw you. It looked like a kitchen at one point with a bunch of mats. I saw you just zooming around some dude half your size and half your weight. It was crazy.
Yeah. No, that was just before the fight. We were warming up. I had my own room. They just took other hotel rooms and just put mats down, took all the furniture out. It was pretty cool. That's definitely one advantage that I feel like I have in the heavyweight division, is just being able to move, having power and a move. And I feel like, kind of like you said, you either have one or the other, but I feel like I'm bringing both. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what kind of advantage that has. And I also feel like I've never been, although I'm really focusing heavily on my athleticism now, I've never been a very heavyweight. So I've really had to focus on the strategy side of it. Just to be the smarter fighter. You know what I mean? I have better fight IQ.
Yes, you did.
So now
I thought your fight IQ, just to get to your point, your fight IQ was eons beyond what Chad had very clearly early on in the match.
Yeah. So I feel like now that I'm getting my athleticism up and I have fight IQ, it's just like I think I'm going to do well. When I heard that I was in the UFC, it's an interesting thing. It's almost like a fight, like winning a fight. When I visualized it in my head for so long, that it's not really an thing for me as much as it's a relief. You know, I have planned this in my head. I don't even know how to explain it. I'm like, this is happening. I'm making this happen in my head. And when it finally happens, oh, thank God it happened. You know what I mean?
Well, and I thought Dana shared some very nice words afterwards. What was it like? I don't know if you listened to any of his press conference afterwards, talking to the reporters. I'm one of those fighter nerds, so I'm always watching the short little 15-minute videos afterwards. But I thought what he had to say about you was he's seen you do this twice. He knows you deserve your shot, and he's excited to see you in the UFC. Did that mean anything to you, or were you able to hear what he said afterwards?
No, I heard what he said immediately, or when he was announcing the contracts, but I didn't hear anything after that.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, it was really cool. He seems very excited. The reporter seemed very excited as well. And like I said, one thing that they mentioned to Dana and one thing he agreed with is that your footwork for your size was impeccable. So it's super cool having someone like Dana White and, to kind of notice you. That's kind of got to be surreal for you.
Yeah, and it was cool just for like the after because he was kind of shitting on some people, but he had nothing but good things to say. So I felt like, oh, it's good. It feels good.
Well, and that's if you're on Dana's good side, you tend to be able to last in the business a lot longer than some. He's let go of some great fighters over the years strictly because he doesn't want to deal with you. So already being on Dana White's good side is a very good sign for you in the UFC.
Yeah, and he was saying that he wanted me to go to the Ultimate, or not the Ultimate Fighter, but the UFC Performance Institute to get a bunch of tests done and all that. So like immediately we planned that. So I'll be out there in a week and a half or so to do all those tests and stuff.
Oh, wow. So yeah, that's what I was about to ask. So they already, what was it? 4 days after getting your contract, they announced that you'll be fighting November 28th. Have you already started going into some training for that? Do you have to have certain personnel from the UFC, or can you rock with the same team that you have, or how does that all work?
So I actually got the call. I actually got a message about the opponent when I was on the plane back home the very next day.
Wow.
So that was it hadn't even been 24 hours yet, which is cool. And I was let's see, what was the other question you asked? Oh, how does it work? So I'll train with the same team. I've been on the same team for 10 years. I've accomplished a lot of things. So I'm not going to switch teams. What's working is working.
Yeah.
And as far as my training, I trained for the first time today. I did some hip mobility stuff this morning on my own, and I grappled this evening. I won't go into a camp until around October 1st. Until then, I will, just because a camp really beats down the body, and that's when I'll start ramping and I'll try to peak. So right now I'll do some strength work. I'll do a lot of like general fitness and stuff like that. Basically get my body prepared for a hard camp without just like destroying myself in the process.
Yeah. Well, especially, have you looked up anything about your opponent? Have you even thought about him? Are you more in just the celebration and kind of slowly getting back into things mode? I've talked to some UFC guys before that say the second they know their next opponent, they instantly go into their next mindset and they just spend the next 6 months obsessing over that one guy. I know we've talked about on the Levi Bowman show how you just kind of show up and do what you do. So I was curious, being in the UFC, if you've paid a little bit more attention to who the guy is more so than what you do, or if that's changed at all.
So my last fight, I didn't watch any fight video. That helped a lot. I felt like I performed much better because I always compete to the level of my opponent. Kind of like in the gym, when I'm sparring with somebody. If they're not very good, I'll kind of like, it's just a habit. I just do it out of habit because I want them to get good work, and I've been doing it for 10 years. So now I don't watch video, and I don't plan on watching. Although I did watch his last fight because his last fight was like 2 weeks ago. I didn't anticipate that. But I feel good about the fight. I haven't gotten too crazy about thinking about it that much. Maybe because I am still riding the high a little bit of what's going on and what being in the UFC hasn't even really set in that much. It set in a little bit yesterday. And a little bit more today, but I feel like it really hasn't hit me completely. But I eventually will obsess over this person like I do every one of them.
Well, I really do appreciate not only you as a person, but your team. You all seem to be kind of an example of what an overall good, not only good team, but a good camp, a good atmosphere, a good mindset a fighter should be in and a team should be in. And it captures the attention of people like the Dana Whites of the world who appreciate the work ethic you put in because you care about this sport so much.
Yeah. I care a lot about it. It means everything to me because I put so much into it and made so many sacrifices. And not only sacrifices that I've made, that a lot of sacrifices that other people have made on the road. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have have appreciated it just like you and have done a lot for me to be here. So, and also